Yeah, hello, this is Satya Prakash Tripathi, and this is my second video on Entity Framework Code First Approach. So, in this video, we would discuss on on the seeding of the data. Um, so, before we start the discussion, I would request everyone to just go and watch my my previous video that discusses on the entity framework and specifically on the introductory part of their code first approach. So it explains you how to create the project, the entity class, the DB context class, the connection strings and all, and how entity framework creates your database and the tables from your entity classes. So anyways, I would just give you an overview on what we had done in our first video. So we created this employee class, and it has three properties: the EMP ID, the name, and the age. This EMP ID has an attribute and says key, and this attribute lies within the system.component model dot data annotations. So actually entity framework, okay, it follows like certain conventions, and one of the convention is that if you have any property in your entity class, if you have any property which has the name ID or the class name then followed by ID, then that property is treated as your primary key. But if you don't follow this rule, then you have to explicitly specify that which property is going to be your primary column. So like here I am specifying that the EMP ID is my primary column. Now after that, we will have to create the employee context class, which inherits from your DB context class. And this employee context class, I'm sorry, I have an old code, just a minute. Okay, so this one has your property, and so it's employees property, which returns a DB set of employee. And finally, in my ASPX, I have this grid, and what this grid does, it just calls, so it creates the employee context object, and then it calls employee context object dot employees, then converts it to the list and assigns it to that grid view data source. Okay, now let me show you that currently I don't have any database right now. So refresh. So okay, I just missed out one thing. In that web.config file, we have to provide their connection string, and that name should be exactly similar to your employee context class. So see, the connection string name is employee context, and this is and this is one more convention. So, and I'm specifying the connection string here, and I say that the database that should get created, its name should be sample. So I don't have any sample database here right now. Let's refresh and show you. Okay, now let's execute it, and it should create your database and the employee table. Okay, so as of now, I think this should get created. Let's refresh. Okay, so this is created. Now the problem that you would see is that it does not have any data. So in our previous video, like we had written the insert SQL statements to insert the data from the database end, but your entity framework, it provides mechanisms to insert the data when your database and the table is getting created. So at least there would be some initial data. So how do we do that? Let's flip to our application and stop this. Okay, now I would now I would add one more class, employee DB initializer. Okay. Anyways, I think it's added. Let's build once. I don't know what happens. Okay. Let's add using, quickly write this, using system dot data dot entity. So this and what we would do is we would inherit from okay, so we have these two classes, drop create database always, drop create database if model, okay, if model changes. So as of now, we would go by this drop create database always, and this asks for your context class, employee context. Okay, so like what would happen is that every time your employee DB initializer object is getting created, your database would get dropped and created again. If you had gone for the second option, then that database would have been dropped only if your model changes, and I've been using entity classes. Basically what I mean is that model and like here their model class is your employee class. So let's, okay, so now there is a method that we would have to override, protected override seed. So this is the method which would get invoked and insert the data. Let's quickly create your employee context, emp context, employee context object, then quickly create two employee objects, emp1 equal to new employee. So I would create name because employee ID is an identity column, so not required. Jack, and the age would be, let's give it 28. Okay, let's create one more. So it would be Smith. $34. Let's add one more, 2, and then we have here 3. So Anthony, and he would be 26. Okay, so now let's quickly add these to your employee context dot employees dot add. We have emp1. I'm sorry. Okay, so I have this. Let's copy it quickly. Okay, so I have got employee 2, employee 3, and finally I would say employee context dot save changes. So this finally saves the data in the database. So I'm done here. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Okay. So this is done. Now what I would do is I would quickly go to your context class and I would say database dot set initializer. So this is the set initializer class, and what it does is it sets the database initializer to use the given context. Okay. Okay, and it says that the database initializer is called when the given DB context type is used to access a database for the first time. Okay. So database set initializer, and it asks for the context. So this, and then new employee DB initializer. Okay, so ideally what this code should be in the application start event handler of the global.asx6 file, but I'm just writing it here, but ideally it should be in that global.asx file. So yeah, anyways, so this is done, and then let's go to your database, close it. Okay, so I close it so that the application does not throw that error that the database is being used. Let's see if it works or not. Let me execute. If everything is okay, it should work, else it would throw an error. Let's see. Okay, so it has inserted three records. Let's go and add one more. let's stop this. Okay, so what I would do is, this has become a bit slow here. Okay, so I would go here, copy this, one more, let me add my name, okay, and okay, let me add Andy. So okay, this is done, and so it's not me, it's Andy, and so emp4. Okay, let's run again and see what happens. Oh, okay, there would be an error, sure. So let me change this to 4. Okay, let's execute. And everything is okay, then Andy should appear as well. If it's not, then like we would debug. So yeah, so like Andy is here. Okay, now let me show you the database. Refresh. Okay, so the sample database is created. Let us add a query here, sample, and show you the records. Select star from employees. Okay, so here we have the entire data. Okay, so then thanks a lot for watching this, and I would soon come up with my third video. So yep, thank you, and bye.